Welcome to BattleTech Faction Briefings. Today, we are focusing upon the most vain mercenary team to ever fight in the Inner Sphere. A team I was introduced to by a pilot card and had to learn more because I didn't believe this was actually a faction. Today, we are talking about Marshigama's Legionnaires. This is a mercenary force with very few major battles to their name, and a history that really sets them apart from the typical mercenary team. The squad is said to be made up of the most beautiful female pilots in the 31st century. Their combat skills, on the other hand, are somewhat mixed, leading to a team most mech commanders might avoid. Despite that, their service of the Capellan Confederation puts them in rare standing with few other major mercenary units. Despite being a mercenary force made up of beautiful women and burly guys, they have an insignia that doesn't seem to really fit that motif. It is a black fiddler crab with a white mohawk. It's an odd choice, but at least it stands out as a team symbol. As for colors, they use a black and white paint scheme that matches their crab symbol. Thus, their units stand out in black and white paint in a non-camo parade color scheme. While militarily not great, it would make them stand out on a game board. Marshigama's Legionnaires are odd when it comes to fiction, as they don't have any stories of their own that I could find, but cameo in other stories. However, if you don't want any spoilers for other units' stories, then skip to the time listed here. Marshigama's Legionnaires served as mercenaries with the Capellan Confederation for decades prior to becoming the version we will talk about today. The real story of the unit begins in an odd place, a beauty contest. Julei Marshigama won the Miss Ningpo competition in 3017. She inherited the unit not too long after and fired every soldier that didn't look the part. Julei had very strict appearance standards for her mech warriors. Women needed to be beautiful, and men needed to be big with facial hair and visible scars. The men's look had two goals. First, to be intimidating, and second, to make the women look even more beautiful in comparison. However, these standards also meant that piloting skill was a secondary concern, and many talented mech warriors were sent packing. After their creation, the team had a long line of victories along the Federated Sun's Capellan Confederation border. However, in 3024, they faced off with the Aragon Borderers on New Aragon. The Legionnaires had a force of Scorpion and Goliath quad-leg battle mechs that were lured into minefields where all but one of each of their quad-leg mechs were destroyed. More than that, their numbers were cut down to company strength. This was a huge loss for the Legionnaires that stuck with them and drove them to want revenge against the Aragon Borderers and the Federated Suns. They ended the Third Succession War stationed on Holloway to rebuild. Holloway tends to be used for training. It became their main base, and they served as the garrison force on Holloway through the Fourth Succession War. Thus, the Legionnaires did not see any combat at that time. During the Andorian Canopan War, the Legionnaires were called into battle once again, and did a quick raid on Bethonolog with little resistance. Their victories helped them rebuild into battalion strength. During the time of rebuilding, Colonel Marshigama put together a fighter squadron. They have the same beauty standards, but men don't have to have beards. They only had male pilots, so the squadron got to be known as the Pretty Boys. The Legionnaires would not see much action during the War of 39, as they played a defensive role and did not face the Federated Sun's counterattack into Capellan space. As the years passed, they primarily were used for garrison duty, and by 3050, they were stationed on Homestead. During Operation Guerrero, they were again used for garrison duty as the Capellan Confederation took back some of the worlds from the Sarna March region. Like in the War of 39, Marshigama's Legionnaires saw no action of note. The Legionnaires also did some guard duty for the Magistry of Canopus, serving on Brixtana in 59. This was due to the Capellan Confederation trying to build alliances with the periphery nations. It also helps that both the mercenary unit and the Magistry are both female-led. In 3061, the Marshigama's Legionnaires were the first to join the Capellan Brigade, a multi-mercenary unit that served as a house military. Due to this status upgrade, the Legionnaires got an ego boost that made them even more difficult to work with. When the Capellan St. Ives War started, they were one of the forces who landed on Denbar. During their time garrisoning the world, they confiscated mechs from the local militia in order to build up their forces. This growth built them up into 2 battalions and expanded their air force. By 3066, they were off to battle on Conquista alongside the Dragon Slayers. They were capable of driving away the First Free World's Legionnaires. Their reward was a large amount of salvage. From there, the border campaign continued to Andorian. However, the First Free World's Legionnaires were there and ready with reinforcements. The Dragon Slayers were crushed, and Marshigama's Legionnaires had to retreat. This left the Victoria Rangers as the only guards of the Capellan border. Marshigama's Legionnaires were beaten down to only battalion strength. While rebuilding their unit, they were stationed on Drozon. Despite some recruitment, they would not get up to their previous strength again. As they were still weak during the Blakist War, the Legionnaires were set with garrison and escort duty, keeping them off the battlefield. The first major battle they were involved with during this conflict was an attack on Zurich in 77. They were teamed up with the Harlock Raiders, but took the planet after the Raiders left for a different front. However, it was a costly battle where the Legionnaires lost a company worth of troops. They remained stationed on Zurich as they rebuilt. Rebuilding would not be very easy, as Ambermarle's Highlanders, a member of the Capellan Brigade, took supplies for the Legionnaires from a factory on Stike. This led to a rivalry between the two units. By 3079, the Legionnaires only had about 15% of their equipment up to modern standards. In 3081, the Capellan Confederation started Operation Golden Fortress, a war against the Republic of the Sphere. At this time, the Legionnaires were stationed on Woodstock. They helped train the 4th Capellan Defense Force, a unit made up of Academy graduates and Green soldiers. The Republic attacked, and despite 4-to-1 odds, the Capellan forces held out for weeks, but eventually had to retreat. The fighting continued on Zurich. Ambermarle's Highlanders were sent in as a backup, but due to the rivalry, they took their time leaving Ozha. Due to this, they were caught off guard and destroyed by the 7th Hissati Sentinels of the Republic forces. The battle on Zurich continued for 6 months before the 6th Hissati destroyed Marshigama's Legionnaires. However, the remaining 13 members of the unit were granted Capellan citizenship and were transferred to the 4th Capellan Defense Force, who had survived the years of fighting against the Republic. At this time, the Capellan Brigade would undergo a change into a Foreign Legion type unit made up of individual mercenaries and criminals who could pilot battle mechs. Marshigama's Legionnaires were an odd bunch. Beyond just their aesthetic rules, they also seemed to do far more guard duty than combat. While they did have some victories to their name, overall, they weren't that impressive in combat. However, upon their destruction, one of their former members became a propaganda symbol. Short-lived as they are, this is one mercenary unit that left a mark on history. But I doubt it is for the reasons Julei Marshigama would have wanted. Despite the lack of action, Marshigama's Legionnaires had a few notable warriors. Julei Marshigama, the first colonel and the commander of this version of the unit. She was a skilled pilot from a mech warrior family, and more importantly, she was a beauty queen. Strangely, Her preferred unit was a Scorpion. Adrienne Marshigama, the second and final Colonel of the Legionnaires. She took over for her mother in 63 and stayed with the unit until their destruction in 84. Her preferred mech is unknown, but likely a top-of-the-line unit provided by the Confederation. Linda Lee Duarte, commander of the Scout Lance, and served until 82, where she was nearly killed by a SRM headshot. She survived and became a symbol of the sacrifices needed for victory. Her primary unit was a Wasp. TFM, the XO of the unit in the early days, and was a survivor of the defeat on New Oregon. She piloted a Goliath. Despite Marshigama's Legionnaires mostly working with the Capellan Confederation, they used more than just the units of the Confederation. This is due to gaining the salvaged battle mechs of the Federated Sons, Free Worlds League, and St. Ives Compact. More than that, they worked with the Magistry of Canopus, providing them with the often strange periphery variants of battle mechs. Due to this, a mech commander has quite a few options when putting together a mech force based on these mercenaries. The only limitation this unit really has is that their forces are 50% medium mechs, providing the speed and versatility a commander might desire, but lacking the raw firepower for prolonged campaigns. It should be noted there is no fiction I could find featuring Marshigama's Legionnaires. However, they are referenced in several books. I generally don't list something if it's just a brief reference, but I did enjoy the Capellan solution where they get name dropped. Outside of that, everything I could find about them comes from sourcebooks. When I read Linda Lee Duarte's pilot card and had to learn if this unit was a joke, after researching for this video, I do respect the unit a bit more than I did when I discovered their unit concept. However, compared to the mercenary units most associated with the Capellan Confederation, McCarran's Armored Cavalry, they actually are a joke. Yet, somehow they survived into the Dark Age, something many mercenary units cannot claim. In addition to that, they have not had any kind of revival, nor do they need one. Their story works as its own weird historical oddity. While they are short-lived, they were around for many eras of gameplay, but I'm sure were probably ignored by many mech commanders due to their very few arrivals on the battlefield. I think that anyone building a Capellan mech force might want to consider making a Lancer 2 of Marshigama's Legionnaires, just because they will stand out amongst the green Capellan forces. If Catalyst wants to make a mech pack of Marshigama's Legionnaires, then here are my suggestions, alongside cards for both Colonel Marshigama's and TFM. Thank you for watching. Next time I'll be looking into their rival units, Ambermarle's Highlanders, which are not associated with the Northwind Highlanders. That makes them a very easy to discuss unit. However, if you have a request, I will get to it as soon as I can. A big shout out to all the mech warriors who have recently subscribed. Thank you so much. May your weapons be hot and your reactors stay cool. Until next time, I'll see you at the tavern.